Hello and welcome to Around the Best Town. I'm your host, Mayor John McCormac, and I'm joined here today by two very distinguished gentlemen. The first one on the right here is Councilman Kyle Anderson, who you all recognize. The second one is Rob Wilkins, who's a member of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. And let me start by Kyle, since it was because of Kyle that we got to meet Rob today and we have a chance to talk to him. And Kyle, tell me about this young man and how you met him and how you kind of grew up with him, and then we'll get into his background and what he represents here today. So take it away a little bit.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us, and I'm really pleased to have Rob back in Island or back in Woodbridge Township. He spent a lot of time here. Growing up, our dads were best friends and our moms were distant cousins, and at one point Rob was at our home so much, our parents decided it would be best for Rob to finish his senior year at JFK High School, and he moved in with us, and he basically became a big brother. We always thought of ourselves as cousins, but he was a big brother to me.
He looks so much younger than you. How's that possible?
He looks a lot better, and that's probably why he's on the Sports and Nutrition Committee. But after, and I'll let Rob tell his story, but after his graduation, he had a knee injury, but he went into the military because he could have gone on and played college basketball. Played basketball at JFK with some great players from JFK, and he went into the military and he built this great military career. And then afterward, he ended up building a great, we don't like to say political career, but the politicians all seem to know him.
A government service career.
Yes, yes. And he traveled the world, and I literally, this is back in the day when you'd get postcards and letters, and I have letters from Rob, and I have pictures and all the people that he met all over the world. Great leaders all over the world, some kings and queens all over the world. But he's accompanied a lot of congressmen to a lot of different countries for whatever reason. And I was always really impressed with his background. But most recently, he was named by one of our former presidents, President Trump, and then reappointed by President Biden as the President's Council on Sports, Nutrition, and Fitness.
Well, that's significant, because how many things do those two men agree on? You might be it.
You might be it.
You might be it.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So I think it speaks volumes about Rob that both presidents had the confidence in him to be this ambassador for the White House and to go and travel the country. And as we were just at his alma mater, JFK High School, speaking to students about the importance of not only living their dream, but the importance of physical fitness, nutrition. We went in and we met with the cafeteria workers. We spoke with many students and coaches about their goal and their commitment towards fitness. And Rob's message was phenomenal.
So you're, I guess, in your role as county superintendent and friend of his, you're doing show and tell with Rob this week.
It really was. It worked out. So you
Most
mentioned
people bring a gadget or something.
Right.
He brought you to
He
show and
brings
tell.
me. Yes,
I
sir.
called Dr. Parry. I sent an email to Dr. Parry and told him that we were being treated with a guest to Woodbridge, and I really wanted to bring him to his alma mater. Dr. Parry and Dr. Lott escorted us around the school, and Rob got to not only see his old school, but also deliver a message from the White House.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with three things: your connection to Woodbridge, then your military career, and then your President's Council career. So tell me a little bit about your Woodbridge connection and the 1 year you played and went to JFK, but you sound like you all but grew up here.
Yes, sir.
Because you're here so much. Go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity, too. So as Kyle said, first of all, he did a great job introducing me, so I don't think there's much more I can say, but our families have been as close as families can be, and so it was always like we wanted to be together all the time. So we were able to play lots of sports together. Most of the time we were outside from dusk to dawn, and we were just running and throwing and catching and sometimes making fun of each other and going to the 7-Eleven and having Slurpees and then getting back to the next game and having just a great time as youth.
Is he anywhere near as good as he tells everybody he was in sports?
He's better.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha.
Way better. But I thought that what a great background and foundation that our families have had created for each other, and that we were all able to become successful because we had this foundation, because we knew about being disciplined, about leadership, about being kind to people. His brother Jimmy was one of the leading receivers at University of Delaware, and if it didn't happen, if he didn't hurt his knee, he probably could have gone on to the NFL, and his sister Lynn was a great scholar. So all these folks around us were great examples. In the Air Force, from time to time, we say it's hard to be what you can't see. Well, I saw success and I saw great things being done by our family members. So for me, I always felt like I had a heads up because I knew what it took to get to a place of success.
Great. And then you go to the Air Force and you have a 26-year career there.
Yes, sir.
And you also have a job and a position that's connected to government because you're involved with politicians and government officials and getting them around. And tell me all about that. That's fascinating.
So in the Air Force, as you said, I served 26 years between Europe and Asia and the United States. Went to about 43 countries. But one of the greatest jobs I had was as a congressional liaison for the United States Air Force. And in that position, you take members of Congress around the world. They're called codels. And on these codels, we do the business of our U.S. government. Meaning we might do something related to sports, might be something related to trade, diplomatic activities. We go see youth from other countries, we see the elderly from other countries, and we kind of compare notes and see what's working in your country, what's working in our country, and how maybe we can develop a great partnership. So spending lots of time with many politicians, I also saw the role diplomacy plays. You have to talk to each other to make things happen. You can have the left and the right, but eventually we have to meet in the middle to do the best for what's best for our country. And I understood that some people, while their aggression and their temper might turn you off, eventually if you can get them in a room and talk to them, and sometimes you can start at sports, you can talk about their grandchildren, you can talk about their families, find something that's common and expand out on that. Now we both like oranges. Now we both like baseball. Now we both like pizza. Maybe we both can find a way to make this bill or this policy come together because now I like you a little bit better. I understand you more. It's not just you against me. We're not enemies. We just have different opinions. And there are often two ways to get somewhere. You can go left and right, but we can still meet in the middle.
So, like we always say in our business, it's about relationships.
It's about relationships.
You've got to know
yes,
people in all these other levels of government. You can be different political parties, but you've got to be able to talk to them.
Yes, sir. And I think sometimes breaking it down to the human element. So, for example, some of the people that I have to deal with, I remember their birthdays. Or if the Yankees, my favorite team,
way to
if
go.
the Yankees win something, or I know a friend who's from Boston, I can razz them. But what I'm doing, I'm making it, it's called an emotional deposit in their account. So by doing those type of things, not just calling them when I need them, but reminding them about something good that happened to them, or if I know that something happened, like they lost a loved one, sending them a sympathy card. Those all go into making a great relationship. So when you do call on them, more than likely they're going to see a way to make it work for you and them.
So if you were on duty now in that position when a bunch of congressmen and senators just went to Ukraine, you would have been the person putting that trip together and taking them around and introducing them, and that's
yes, sir. I've been part of that team. There's a team of about 24 or a little bit more who put these trips together. So you work with the Air Force, you work with the flight director, you work with the ambassador for the country that you're going to, you work for the embassy staff, and you come up with a game plan. Then you normally have a meeting prior to the trip to make sure everybody knows what the game plan is.
Go ahead.
And Rob, one of your mentors was a man named Ben Weeder.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And tell us about him and what he meant to you.
So Ben Weeder is probably known as one of the modern fathers of bodybuilding movement. He had a brother named Joe Weeder. So Ben and Joe Weeder started a magazine called Muscle and Fitness, and what their goals was to take health and fitness globally. They didn't think that it was just something that you should be doing. They were from Canada, but they thought that people who feel better, who look better, who just have more mobility or become better citizens, they become better for business, they become better politicians. Because once you feel good, you do good things. So they took a kid from Austria named Arnold Schwarzenegger and made him a global star.
Really? They're responsible for
They're responsible for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wow. But they're also responsible at one time for about 25% of all the vitamins that were sold in the U.S. They're also responsible for having gymnasiums in schools and at hotels and at military bases, because at the time, people called you muscle bound if you lift weights. So they got with doctors. A lot of them happened to be from Russia, who the Russians saw the benefits of being stronger, faster, quicker, and that nutritional supplements and weight training would be a way to get there. So thanks to the Wheater brothers and their dedication and their desire to make America stronger, fitter, and the world actually, we now know the bodybuilding movement. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the people who served on our President's Council many years ago.
Who's the most famous person you met traveling Europe with political figures?
The most famous person I met.
Most known, yeah. Did you take, was Obama when he was a congressman? Did you take anybody who became a president or vice president?
Being blessed by the Pope. So I'm Catholic.
Oh, okay.
So we go and we have an audience. And so as an altar boy and all, I remember we were going to be blessed by the Pope, and I have these rosary beads, and he goes, Dominus Omnis. And I thought, I could walk in front of a train or a bus and nothing will happen to me because I've just been blessed by the Pope.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And I still have those rosary beads by my bed every night. I sleep next to them, yes.
Now take me to the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition now. You get appointed to that by sitting Republican President Donald Trump.
Yes, sir.
You're not the typical appointee that, hey, we talked about this. I know the guy from the 5th District in New Jersey, and he helped me get elected, and I got to do him a favor. So I call him up and I say, who do you have for this President's Council? You weren't a political appointment. You were a actual talented, experienced appointment to this board. That's unusual.
I think I was in the right place at the right time, but I give a lot of the credit to the United States Air Force for preparing me. I give credit to our families, for preparing me when I was younger to make sure that I understood the importance of serving your country and doing good for your country. And my wife and my son and all my friends who were really supportive of me having this, because there's nothing greater to me than serving your country. You think, how lucky am I that I get to do this? I mean, there are millions of people, and you get the job. And so my goal is to make sure that America takes advantage of the opportunities we have here, but taking advantage of those opportunities means you need to be fit, because there's a German saying the person with their health has 1,000 wishes. The person without their health has but one.
Good point.
And that is to take care of themselves. So,
and you get reappointed by a Democratic president, and so you're now looked at as being not apolitical. You're looked at, oh, he's the guy. So now tell me, what is the council's message? We got about 3 minutes left. What is the council's message to people in Woodbridge Township watching here, and supplement that with your personal message?
So for the people of this great town, it's about getting out and moving more. Maybe if you worked out when you were younger, don't go back to where you stopped at, because your body's not really probably capable to go run a mile in 7 minutes, but maybe start walking. Maybe take the farthest parking space at the local store, at the library. Walk as far as you can. Maybe during commercials, do a few push-ups and jumping jacks and crunches during that time. I call them commercial ups. That's instead of push-ups. But start investing in your health, because I have a campaign called Do It For Them, where I find a lot of veterans, they don't really care about themselves as much about their physical fitness, even though their best weapon was their body when they were younger, but they want to be there for their granddaughter. They want to walk her down the aisle. They want to be there for their grandson to play ball, or with their granddaughter to pick up a tennis racket. So start doing the things that'll make you healthier, drinking a little bit more water, eating less fast food, and step by step. So what you do in 1 week, then build to a month, and then 6 months, and you'll find progression. You'll find that your health will improve. Ask experts on how they get to these, how do you make yourself healthier? How do you make yourself better? Because there's so much information, it can become confusing. Or you can just go to health.gov. There's lots of great information at health.gov related to physical fitness, nutrition. That'll be the foundation of your plan.
And your message to teachers, we have a minute left. Your message to teachers has to be, this is what you need to be telling your students. Gym teachers, health teachers, everyday teachers, principals, you name it. This is what you should be telling your kids. It's found by lots of research, backs it up, that students who exercise, who are on sports teams, do better in school. They stay more focused. And 90% of the women in C-suites have a sports background. So if you want your daughter to be a CEO of a company, put her on a sports team. Wow, that's a good message.
That is a good one. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for this, Rob Wilkins, member of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. You have a great message. I'm thrilled that you stopped by. We're just going to say hello, and then all of a sudden we said, let's put this guy on TV, man. It's
Great idea.
Right?
Great
so
idea.
I want to thank you very much for appearing with us.
Thank you,
Kyle,
sir.
thanks for bringing Rob in to meet us, and thanks for your message to our residents and especially to our kids.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you for watching for Around the Best Town. I'm your host, John McCormac. We were blessed by the presence of Rob Wilkins today from the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, and of course Kyle Anderson, who's your host for the Juneteenth show. And let's take you right now back to Kyle Anderson. And welcome back to Around the Best Town. I'm your host, John McCormac, joined this time by Kyle Anderson, Councilman solely, and boy, wasn't Rob Wilkins a great guest.
Really was. It's so nice that when somebody who's done so much and has moved away comes back to their town. I know that students over at JFK will definitely remember
And
his visit.
he's so humble and so unassuming.
Yeah.
But he's accomplished so much.
Somebody said that they were blessed by the Pope.
You're right, exactly. That was so cool.
Yeah.
So we're here today to talk about Juneteenth. And we know that was it is a federal holiday signed into law last year by President Biden. It's the third weekend in June.
Yes.
And I'm here with Councilman Kyle Anderson, who last year set up a whole Juneteenth festival in town. It was, I think, very successful for first time out of the box.
Yeah.
A lot of things start slow and build up a couple of years before they get to the peak. Yours started out very strong. So let's start with Juneteenth as a whole. Tell me about the holiday and tell me about what led up to it, and then we'll talk about the Woodbridge experience.
Sure. So the holiday came out of Texas. Galveston, Texas is back in 1865, June 19th, 1865. So as you know, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Lincoln in January of 1863. Well, in Texas, they were a little slow to inform a lot of people who were enslaved then. And after the Civil War had ended, the Union troops, there were approximately 2,000 Union troops that went down to inform over 250,000 slaves that slavery was officially coming to an end. So they considered that day Juneteenth Day, and I've also heard it called Jubilee Day.
To celebrate the fact that that was the official end. The last of the slaves were freed, and that was the official end.
That was it. It was the end of slavery, and we were only going to move forward as a nation from there.
And then President Biden declared it a federal holiday. Governor Murphy declared it a state holiday. So now this year, I think we're off the Friday before.
Yeah.
That must be the 18th we're off. Juneteenth is a Saturday this year.
Sure, and you would think that most African Americans would know about the holiday, but I didn't really learn about it until I was like 19 or 20 myself when I was in college. And I remember when I first got into the workforce, somebody told me, hey, today's Juneteenth Day, and it made me ask about the holiday. My parents weren't from Texas. It was primarily a Texas holiday, but it was the end, it was the overall end of slavery. And I think that holiday became more and more significant nationwide over the last few years and what we've gone through socially as a country.
Right. The unrest and then the recognition of the whole BLM movement and people talking about it. And that kind of led, like you said, to the whole holiday being official.
Yeah, it was another way for our nation to acknowledge. And I think that's the first step in anything when you have any type of social issues or problems. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge that there is a problem and that it exists. And we have to acknowledge that this holiday is meaningful to many African Americans, and quite honestly, it's very meaningful to the entire country.
So you started back after the Black Lives Matter movement and the unrest and all the things that were going on in town. You spearheaded the start of an organization, WONAC, Woodbridge Organization of Neighbors Advocating Change. Start
Yes.
with that before we get to Juneteenth. Tell me about that organization. And you met all the time and you had a whole lot going on. It was Zoom because it was in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
But tell me about WONAC.
So I was approached by a few residents and they just said, we really need something. And there were so many different issues that were going along with these racial issues that were going on throughout the United States. There was issues with our first responders and events and representation in town and our education itself. We talk a lot about how our children are being educated. Are they being involved in the AP classes and so forth. And you and I both attended the first Black Lives Matter
big rally.
The big rally, absolutely.
Had a whole bunch of smaller ones after that, but the big one was the first one.
And the students there really expressed some of the things, some of the challenges that they had growing up in the schools here, and that's something that I think that our school board did a good job of recognizing. And out of that, a lot of conversation happened. And WONAC was parents and students, and we had blacks and whites and people who were business owners, people who were attorneys and elected officials and so forth. We just started meeting and just started talking about what we needed to do. And out of that, we formed a few committees. We had an education committee, a youth committee, first responders, law and government. We had, and also, you know, the township responded as well with the HRC.
Right, exactly.
So, and we had representatives at each one of those meetings, and some of our representatives also came to some of the council meetings. From that, they would come back to our weekly meetings that we would hold on Zoom because it was during COVID. And we would just talk about the issues. And one of the things we talked about was, wouldn't it be great to throw a first ever Juneteenth event in town? And we reached out to the township fully embraced it, and vendors responded, and our police department, our fire department, our health department, library, all came out.
A whole group. It was
really
one of the first ones we did of that. Then we took that show on the road and brought everybody to different senior buildings and apartment complexes, and we kind of had that concept, but it all started with Juneteenth.
Yes, yeah, and we were blessed with great weather. We only kept it to about 4 hours. You know, festivals sometimes go on for a long time, you know, several hours. But we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew. We had a few singers,
I was just going to bring up that.
Yeah, a couple of local singers.
Was Brielle there?
Yeah, Brielle Frage.
Yep.
And we also had Nevaeh Holt. And Nevaeh is actually signed with a recording company, and she came from California to sing her song. And then we had some dancers from across the floor, and we had a few people come in and talk about the history, and then we had lots of vendors and lots of great food, which is what every festival is remembered for, is the food and the music.
Right.
Yeah.
And everything was black themed.
Yeah.
The food, the crafts, the vendors, everything had that overriding celebration of your race, your culture.
Absolutely. And we even we had a couple of Mexican food trucks that came in as well. But yeah, there was a lot of like soul food and southern type of food. And we had Marlon from Chick-fil-A.
He's the best.
And Marlon is from Texas originally, so he grew up celebrating that holiday. And so I learned a lot from him about the holiday and what it meant. And he and I had a few conversations about it, and I felt really good that we really met the expectation of what that holiday stands for. And every year we're going to try to do better and add different things to it. But we want to just, we want to definitely keep it a Woodbridge type, of event, and just make it an annual event so that we can pull it off every year, because sometimes you get too big and then it's really hard to pull something off like that every year. But we want to keep it nice and keep it for the families.
So it's at Woodbridge High School on the perfect venue, which is the concert field.
Yeah.
So the stage is already set up, because I think the next night we open up our concert series with Halamali on Father's Day.
That location was perfect. That was a great suggestion.
It's June 18th.
June 18th on Saturday.
12 to 4?
12 to 4.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything special people can expect this year that wasn't there last year?
Well, let's see. The lines were huge at Rita's Italian Ice, and we have the fish and shrimp guys, my buddies Jason and Mitch.
That was terrific.
Those lines are huge, and those guys have already committed. We also have Feed Your Soul, who's a great local business owner.
I love his turkey wings.
Oh, yeah.
They're so good.
I can't wait for him to come back as well. But we're going to add some face painting. We're going to try to honor some of our state champions, the Colonia sectional basketball champions. We're going to have some of the students from all of the 3 high schools come out and coordinate games with some of the kids, just like a kickball game, or maybe we'll have them throw football and see who can throw for accuracy, those kinds of things. but it should be fun.
And do you have the man I think is probably the most famous resident of Woodbridge right now, after you and I, of course.
Yeah.
But is Eric LeGrand bringing coffee?
We are going to reach out to Eric about having some coffee there. I know he just launched his business, and it's so nice to see a young man that I watch grow up, you watch grow up.
You went on the council year. We probably didn't call a game together.
No.
But I called games with him, and I'm telling you, it was like watching a man play with boys.
It really was.
That's how good he was.
And I saw him in Woodbridge Little League
Right.
and Woodbridge Rec basketball, where he was just a head taller than all the other kids. So going over to his business is just, it's really great. I know that the township, and I've been talking with Carol Ehrlich about keeping track of all of the black-owned businesses in town.
I'm going to get to that in a second, yeah.
And but Eric spearheads that right now. Now he's one of the front runners, and we try our best not to think about color when we think about anybody and everything. And Eric represents all of Woodbridge. He's
red and black.
Absolutely.
For Rutgers. I mean,
yes.
They had the coach there, Shiano, the AD, Patrick Hobbs there, the governor there, senator, assembly people. Unbelievable.
Everybody shows up for him.
Yep, he's great. So you mentioned what we're going to do. So from June 1st through June 19th, we're going to recognize 19 different black business owners. Now, we started with Black History Month in January. We had people featured, including yourself.
Yeah.
Then we did Women's History Month in February and featured all kinds of different women in government, in education, just wherever in the town that were noted. Now we're going to do 19 straight black-owned businesses. I think we're starting with Eric LeGrand, but there's so many other ones. You said Feed Your Soul, La Vibe, we just did the grand opening. There's so many other black businesses in town, including a handful in the mall that I never even knew existed.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
It's important because, when we talk about the economic gap between blacks and whites in America, the overall economic gap is 177,000 to 17,000. And we've done I think that blacks themselves have done everything that has been asked of them. They've fought in wars. They've voted. They've waited their turn for years and years and years. And now it's time where you want to be able to develop wealth, and you want to be able to pass that down to your family members. Generational wealth is one of the gaps that really leaves blacks behind many other races nowadays. And to know that we're supporting our businesses here in Woodbridge Township, and that we celebrate those businesses, and we ask people to go there. One of our good friends and somebody who trained you, Philip Claremont,
right.
He and his wife Michaela own Want a Smoothie. Philip is one of our members of WONAC.
Right.
And
Bounce Back Fitness.
Yes, he's an entrepreneur. He has a couple of different businesses, but that's what we want to celebrate. We want people to, we don't necessarily have to say, hey, we have to go to a black-owned business, but it's like, here's a business owner who happens to be black.
Exactly.
You
won't walk into Want a Smoothie saying, I know you just go there and there's Phil.
There is, and then it's a family environment as well. His kids went to Rush Street just as mine.
Right.
So to me, it's just supporting another local business owner. I'll drive across town from Colonia to come over and get a smoothie from them, just because I know Phil is what's great about Woodbridge Township.
Right, and then you're an example of our own government practicing what we preach, because you were the very first appointed official in government in the town or the Board of Ed, and you were the very first minority elected council person in the history of Woodbridge Township.
Yeah.
And since you, there's been Monica Michelle Smith, and of course there's been Marie Anderson, and several others through black, Asian, Indian, Hispanic, all over every level of government. And that's you were the pioneer.
Yeah, I don't always look at it that way, but because it's the same thing. When I grew up in Woodbridge Township, I really didn't think about the fact. It didn't occur to me until it was announced, or until
that says a lot about the way you approach things.
Yeah, when we were discussing it, when you and I were discussing it, we were, it wasn't really mentioned.
Right.
It wasn't really mentioned until we realized the significance of it.
Well, you were asked because of the Broncos, not the Broncos yet.
At the time, it was Islam Giants.
You ran the biggest league in town, so you had involvement in a whole host of things, your kids' education, athletics, you name it. So that's why you were picked. And by the way, you checked the box. and led the cause, led the charge. So
yeah, and I've been happy about that, and I do try to share that story with people. And now it's great because it's an afterthought. Because when we appoint someone, and I always go back to the RBG, you know, with our past Supreme Court Justice,
right.
where when they said, when is your work going to be done? And she said, when there are 9. When there are 9 women that
right.
could be on the
Right.
on the Supreme Court Justice. And that's the way we should be thinking about things. We shouldn't look at it and say, that seat that Kyle sits in, that will always be for a black person. We could say, well, there could be, you know, Abdul Salim Hassan could be
Right,
sitting
right.
right next to him, and we wouldn't think anything of it.
there could be another black seat when you're already on the council.
Yeah.
But I just love our diversity, and you're an example of that. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Around the Best Town, talking with Councilman Kyle Anderson about a very important event coming up June 18th from 12 to 4 at Woodbridge High School, our second annual Juneteenth celebration. Food, games, crafts, vendors, music, you name it. Hope you can make it. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, man.